Welcome everyone at our yet another monitoring about Ukraine's implementation of commitments for the European Union. We have in simultaneous interpretation. If someone needs, please use this opportunity. So today we have already the 13th monitoring of our commitments. Who are we? We are consortium RRR for you. These are four organizations. It's Institute of Economic Research, it's a Center of Economic Strategy, DiXi Group, and Institute of Analytics and Advocacy. We have been working in this mode for several years already, and I would like to remind you once again about who we are and what is RRR for you. So when words, that's resilience, reconstruction, and relief. And we are focusing on all these notions in our work because monitoring is one of our products. You can familiarize yourself with others on the website of our consortium. Our activity is supported by Renaissance Foundation, and we're extremely grateful for this opportunity to conduct this monitoring. The monitoring is important because of several reasons. So first of all, it is trust to Ukraine, because if Ukraine is executing commitments, that's about trust. This is also about the fact that Ukraine is performing its initials, its reforms and agenda for preconditions. And we also would like to mention that EU and IMF, these are not our only commitments. It's just that what we're monitoring, because we get money from that from the EU based on Ukraine facility mechanism. And it's important to mention here that we also have commitments that we take on ourselves to get money from the World Bank and other players, and we also have huge agenda on our way to European integration. We have to execute all of this, and we have to do it in a timely manner. So today we are going to talk in the first part about what is going on with program of IMF right now, what is happening with the Ukraine plan, and the second topic, what has gone wrong with Lozovyi edits. According to IMF program, till the end of the previous year, we had to cancel edits of Lozovyi. Something has gone wrong, and today we will try to understand what exactly the point of view of business, anti-corruption organizations and bodies. So first of all, I would like to give the floor to Maxim Samoyluk. I have already mentioned that Lozovyi is edits. It is not executed, but what about the seventh review? Because we know that there is agreement on the level of experts, but Maxim will tell us in more details what are the risks and what's going on with the program right now. Maxim, please, the floor is yours. Thank you, Alexandra. Welcome, welcome everyone. So, if to talk about our performance of IMF program, we are in such transition period because today is the 27th of March, tomorrow on the 28th of March, we are expecting that Council of European Monetary Fund adopts this review and actually, Ukraine achieved it still previous month on the 28th of February. Yes, Alexandra has already mentioned that one of the commitments has not been executed. It's a cancellation of edits of Lozovyi, and the fact that Ukraine has managed to achieve this agreement on the level of staff means that once again IMF is meeting us halfway, showing some flexibility, and that's why we hope that tomorrow we are going to also have confirmation of this reviewal by the Council of International Monetary Fund, and everything goes as it should. Ukraine asked to decrease the volume of this tranche to reserve money for the next year. Really, previously it has been planned that Ukraine should receive around $900 million based on the result of the seventh review, but on the request of Ukraine, if it is approved by the Executive Council of the Fund, then the amount of money that we will get in the nearest weeks will be around $400 million. Why is it going on? Why is it happening? We have to mention that the general volume of financing is decreasing, but it's not decreasing, but Ukraine asked to prolong it a little bit. Now in 2025, we have better situation with external financing and budget deficit, first and foremost, because of the program era and financing from Russian frozen assets. We talked about that in more details in our previous monitorings. And because of the fact that now we have more stable budget position, Ukraine has asked that in 2027, we get a little bit more financing and have more bigger confidence in our next years. Maybe International Monetary Fund on our request also might decrease volume of financing on the 8th or next reviews of this year, but we haven't talked about that yet. The mandatory condition for the 7th review was signing draft law on increasing an excise tax on tobacco production. It was waiting for several months for president's signatures. That's because of this delay. More than 2 billion hryvnias were not received to the budget, but it was signed nevertheless, and IMF agreed to review in the 7th the program of cooperation. Based on the result of the 7th review, we might have some new structural beacons or new commitments. We will find out about that in the nearest future. Our consortium will keep on monitoring they're executing, and we will inform all the participants about the risks of our cooperation. Actually, what is going to happen at the 8th review? It will take place in June. During that, those beacons will be evaluated that Ukraine has to execute as of the end of March 2025. These are beacons with the deadline at the end of January and February. They in this current program, we did not have beacons with the deadline end of March, so we're not waiting for some urgent execution today, tomorrow, or next day that we still have in March some other beacons. So already now we can see what's the situation concerning the 7th review. And frankly speaking, this picture is not really satisfactory. Out of 5 beacons that fund is going to evaluate, we have performed fully and timely only 2. 3 more we haven't performed on time. Unfortunately, it's appointing the head of Bureau of Economic Security. The competition there is only on preliminary stage. It's also finalization of National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine external audit and preparation of strategy for national securities and stock market commission. That at the end of January, when we had to publish this, only the work had only started then. So we can state that the progress cannot be considered satisfactory, and we will need either to execute beacons untimely. We still have time until June, or somehow agree with IMF to change such beacons or postpone their deadlines. In any case, we have to once again rely on IMF flexibility that for the last several years is extremely beneficial for Ukraine, and actually it is helping us to obtain foreign financing during the war. It is they have very good attitude towards Ukraine, and we would like to emphasize once again that we shouldn't take this attitude for granted, and we shouldn't expect it to be forever. We have to perform and to execute all our commitments fully. We keep on talking about that because it's extremely important. Thank you. That's it from my side. A little bit later, my colleagues will talk in more details about Lozovyi's edits that were in the 7th review. And now I would like to give the floor back to Alexandra. Alexandra, please, the floor is yours. Thanks a lot. Yes, actually, based on this program, IMF is really flexible towards Ukraine. I remember programs that we didn't execute on time before. So everything started from the fact that we three reviews, it was maximum that we could get before, and then we faced with something, and we agreed for some kind of new program. Now IMF is flexible from the point of view that IMF program is the basis for coordination of other help, and for Ukraine it is of the utmost importance. So concerning tranche, decrease of tranche, I would like to mention as a specialist in fiscal matters that actually it means that we have pretty well management of liquidity from the side of Ministry of Finances, because the program is designed in such a way that next year we will need to pay money to the fund and get less, but now it is equal. But I just would like to praise Ministry of Finances to give them the credit for managing liquidity in a proper way. But now I would like to give the floor to Alona Korohot. So what's going on with Ukraine plan, and do we have risks not to receive the funds from the European Union in a timely manner? And we really need them. Thank you, Alexandra. Let's talk a little bit about Ukraine plan. So to help Ukraine in recovery and modernization, the European Union keep on providing its financial support within a Ukraine facility that is presupposed till 2027. Uh, as of March, in the middle of March, Council of the European Union uh, agreed on 3.5 billion euros for Ukraine for performing certain indicators from the Q4 of 2024. 400 million will be grants. Ukraine will get around 20 billion euros within the program from the moment of it's coming into action 1 year ago. And in 2025, we expect to have 12.5 billion within Ukraine facility. Also, in the middle of February, European Commission announced about formulation of audit council and appointed three consultants, three specialists. The council will be active till the end of June 2026, and Professor Morik Belka from the former president of National Bank of Poland is there, and also he's an expert in audit and control, and he has huge experience in audit and control. And also, there is a specialist on financial management that was working in international organizations. Generally, the format of work of Council presupposes regular visits to Ukraine and constant cooperation with government of Ukraine and international partners to strengthen trust to Ukraine facility program. The activity of Audit Council will be also together with the Secretariat in Kiev on the 26th of March. Audit Council and Ministry of Finance signed memorandum of cooperation. And apart from that, we were talking about Euro Commission planned to launch so-called informational panel on implementation of Ukraine's plan scoreboard. It has already appeared on the European Commission website, and as it has been mentioned, it is going to be updated twice a year, but our consortium is monitoring it monthly. So you can also monitor us on a regular basis. And when we are talking about the performance of very indicators, till the end of March, Ukraine has to execute 16 indicators. And as of now, we have the following situation. Executed or performed indicators are 7. Among them, we also have no law on preschool education, legislation on public consultation, the development of irrigation system of Ukraine. We also have new plan of radio frequencies in Ukraine. We approved action plan on moving public services, and also the law on climate policies came into force still in October 2024, and the action plan is approved concerning greenhouse gas emissions. And despite 7 indicators were executed, we still have those indicators that have not yet been performed or executed till the end of the month or quarter. We actually still have 2 working days, but in our case, so when plans are postponed to the very last hours or days, we need to say that we have 2 more days, and it's a lot for 2 more indicators. So what do we have to do during these 2 days? In the sphere of reform of public reform, we are expecting that reform on remuneration will come into force on the 17th, starting from the 17th of March. It is waiting for the president's signature, and until it is not signed, indicator is not considered executed. Fight against corruption and money laundering, we are expecting also to have a bigger amount of staff in Supreme Court, Supreme Corruption Court. Here, actually, we have this risk of non-performing indicator, and we mentioned about that in previous indicators, and not only we have mentioned that. And based on the information of High Qualification Commission of Judges, as of 17th of March, there still have 25 vacancies. It's almost 40% from threshold, and among them in appeal chamber 10, well, actually 8 positions. In our opinion, we can consider this indicator as the one that has been performed only if we have flexible approach from the side of the European Union when they estimate the formal decision without actually filling in the positions. And apart from that, we are expecting for approving the law, and in the sphere of managing state assets, we are waiting for the roadmap for public services and other activities. Up till now, there is no information available about this indicator. So we also have we see that there might be certain risk in the sphere of human capital. There should be strategy on the cultural development of Ukraine. Based on our information, we are expecting for its approval tomorrow by the Cabinet of Ministers. In the sphere of decentralization and regional policy, we are expecting for the legislation to come into force concerning reformation of territorial organization of executive government. Here we also can see high risk of timely execution of this indicator. In agro-industrial sector, automized system should start working. We are expecting for the confirmation of its work actually, and similar situation is in the factor of critical minerals management. There are still lots of steps that have been done already, but we are waiting for official confirmation. And in the sphere of digital transformation, we are expecting for legislation to come into force concerning strengthening of cybersecurity of state informational resources and assets and objects of critical infrastructure. It is expecting for additional reading in the parliament. And judging from what we have and what picture we see right now on the slide, what has been executed and what has to be done in the nearest future, pretty possible that we will have the same situation as was previous year when we had certain delays with reports and with allocating money. So we might have the same situation. Of course, it is not really good, but still we believe that I still have a little bit more time. And we hope that everything is okay. Thank you, Alexandra. I would like to give the floor to you now. Thank you, Alona. And actually, you have answered the question that we had in the chat. What would be the consequences of not executing indicators till the end of March? Well, we hope that at least we will do it in April and we will get financing a little bit later in April. I would give you, I have provided the reference to our presentation. It has more than 100 slides. It's in the chat. Alexandra is actually asking where we can take a look at the list of non-performed indicators. Actually, in the presentation, you have all the information why those indicators are needed and what's going on with them. We also have the comment in the chat that in the one of the article of Ukraine of education, it's something wrong. So the comment from Irina Antsefrova, let me explain how we are working in consortium in the presentation. The indicator structural beacons are divided into organization. If to talk about preschool education, it is my indicator, and I would like to mention that really it is not in the compliance of all directives of the regulation of the European Union, and it is mandatory right now. But now actually the approach has changed partly concerning performance of indicators. In previous years, actually, it has been done just to tick the box now. what is adopted by Ukraine should be in compliance with our Euro integration intentions. If you have any other comments or questions, then please, Irina, please, yes. Thank you. Could you please introduce yourself? Irina Antsefrova, NGO Basis of Conscious Kryvyi Rih. I would like to ask if there are any comments, remarks concerning the law on preschool education. So if we have them, should we connect with you or should we submit it to Education Committee of the Verkhovna Rada? Because there are no notifications that some changes might be introduced. To sub-law, yes, but to the law on preschool education, no offers concerning working on the law. Thank you. Well, as far as I understand the situation, once again, sorry, I talk a lot, but I'm a moderator, but it was my indicator. So the situation is the following. Right now, changes to the law are not really being prepared right now, but they're definitely going to be prepared within Ukraine's EU accession process. Now we have screenings going on, and according to that, we will have the national plan on introducing changes to certain legislation. There will be changes for certain laws, and according to the fact how Olga Stefanishyna is going to do that, the Vice Prime Minister on Euro integration, this year we will be developing changes, and next year they will be passed. So you need to monitor each particular law here and see what has to be changed, because so far I also haven't seen any movements in the changes, but it will be done based on the screenings. We have one more question. Andro Didiani, maybe you want to ask the question, or should I read your question from the chat? Excuse me for my Ukrainian, but you can speak English. It's absolutely okay.
Okay, дякую. Well, I will just read out the question that I've that I've written. What if some stakeholders believe that some of the decisions taken by the government as part of implementation of the Ukrainian recovery plan are counterproductive to the achievement of the set objectives? Something that might not be readily formulated as an indicator, for example, related to human capital development, but in reality can have extremely negative effect on, for example, children and their safe upbringing. How do we, is everything, devil is in details, and is it possible to somehow communicate it, and is it possible to is everything taken into consideration, all the aspects uh, that that are not right now directly linked to the indicators? That's my question. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, dear colleagues. Maybe someone would like to answer, or should I do that? Okay, let me try. So you see, actually, in Ukraine, we have a public discussion of certain draft laws and decisions of the government and so on and so forth. Not all of them, but what you have mentioned, NGOs very often talk about that if they're working in this or that sphere. When we mentioned that certain rules may be violated, or rights of certain groups of population violated, especially if you're talking about children and so on and so forth. So we are talking about that, and NGOs are talking about that in their own spheres. We are trying to reach the government and deputies. So this is the dialogue that is going on. According to one of the indicators, Ukraine has the law on public consultations. So when this law works, but according to indicator, it will be after the year after the martial law is lifted, then these public consultations will be obligatory, and we will know in advance about all the decisions, and our analysis will be more detailed. Today, we are trying to act through our various ways, passes to stop certain decisions that might be counterproductive or negative. That's my answer to your question. If you have no further questions, I would like to move to our topic of today's meeting, edits of Lozovyi. This actually there is real structural beacon. The deputies are not even ready to discuss certain draft laws in their agenda. Let's start from the fact that Vyacheslav from the Institute of Analytics and Advocacy will present our point of view. So he will lead us to the discussion. So he will explain us what's going on there, and then we'll move to the discussion as such. Vyacheslav, please. Thank you, Alexandra. And can you see my presentation? Okay, so first of all, let's start from the fact that we would like to remind our listeners, our audience, that Lozovyi added that a range of changes to procedural codes and other legislative normative acts that were proposed by People Deputy Andriy Lozovyi in 2017. And at the same time, they were also adopted by Verkhovna Rada. But the biggest influence that we still have now were edits introduced to criminal procedural code that came into force in March of 2018. They were about pretty wide range of important procedural actions. It is, for example, calculation of the pretrial investigation period and also criminal procedure closing. We would like to say that the some of these edits have already been cancelled, but some of them are still acting. So the last in December of 2023, actually after the letter of G7, Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine partially cancelled edits of Lozovyi. Actually, on the starting from the 1st of January 2024, norms came into force, and according to them, absolutely cancelled pre-trial investigation period before a notification of suspicion to a person. But now this term added to Lozovyi, they are actually used when we are talking about closing of a pre-trial investigation because of the pre-trial investigation period and the order of continuing pre-trial investigation period prolongation. So actually our international partners, IMF in particular, has repeatedly highlighted this need to cancel Lozovyi's edits. So it's not a surprise that in the memorandum in summer 2024 we got this beacon about this particular matter. For strengthening effective procedures, in particular corruption crimes, Ukrainian part promised to cancel mandatory closing of pretrial investigation after notification of suspicion to a person, and also to grant powers to the investigative judge to also encourage prosecutors to make decisions in a timely manner or refuse to grant the motion. I would like to mention immediately here that preliminary this beacon had a deadline of October 2024. At the same time, we didn't manage to perform it on time. That's why this beacon was postponed to December 2024, but as it has already been mentioned by Alexandra and Maxim, actually up till now we still haven't managed to execute this beacon. In general, there were several attempts already to cancel Lozovyi's edits, but now on the table we have one main draft law and three alternative ones about actually this cancellation of Lozovyi's edits. At the same time, at the beginning of the year, the parliament didn't support didn't support such draft laws on the agenda, so they are still waiting for reviews. And if to mention the main thing from these draft laws that we would like to say that they offer the following things: to add to criminal procedural code the commitment of the prosecutor to perform one of the actions, not no later than the last day of pretrial investigation, to exclude from criminal procedural code provision about closing of criminal procedure, to introduce new mechanism according to which investigative judge will consider whether the prosecutor should finish a pre-trial investigation, and based on the draft law, also to grant powers to prosecutors office staff instead of investigative judge to continue a pre-trial investigation period from 6 to 12 months. As I have been mentioned, it has not yet been approved. So basically, our Верховна Rada failed this beacon. But as we know already on the level of the staff, there is an agreement with IMF. So we expect that but once again, this beacon will be postponed. What is important to mention here is that there are various positions of stakeholders concerning such draft laws. As I have already mentioned about the fact that Verkhovna Rada couldn't even include such draft laws into the agenda. Probably it is important to emphasize here on the absence of certain political will, because part of the deputies that, for example, have the part of the deputies have certain concerns that it might impact them directly. Apart from that, we can say that National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office supported one draft law that is directed towards inevitability of punishment. At the same time, representative of business unions and the Chamber of Commerce of Ukraine mentioned had a statement concerning these draft laws, and they have mentioned the risks of such draft laws. So, in fact, they haven't supported any of them, and they offered to initiate wide discussion with representatives of business, experts, and population concerning other changes that might have better access to legislation. That's it, and I would like to give the floor to Alexandra and our experts so that they can explain in more details what's the matter and what shall we expect in the context of canceling of Lozovyi's edits. Thank you, Vyacheslav. When we were talking behind the curtains, actually, this matter, so not only with us, but also international representatives, Lozovyi's edits, it was clear that deputies didn't want to vote for that, and we understood the problem. But at the same time, lots of people were surprised that business is not actually supporting such edits, and they want some kind of alternative variants and alternative measures concerning this cancellation. So that's why we just decided to discuss this matter, and I would like to ask Roman Vasyuk, business ombudsman, to tell us a little bit more about the point of view of business. From your point of view, I know that you have prepared the letter with the position, but today we would like to actually hear it and discuss. Roman, please, the floor is yours. We can't hear you, and I can see you. Yes, something was wrong with the program here, some technical glitches. So, from our point of view, we are working a lot concerning business. In Ukraine, the problems are not found when cases come to courts or when some decisions are made. The problems are with long, prolonged even procedures after them. Some suspicion might be announced, but actually 94% against business never get to business, and a little bit less percentage, but not much less, even do not have the suspicion notification. So the very procedures that now, after cancellation of the first edits of Lozovyi, might be endless, is the main form of drinking blood from business, from the side of malevolent state bodies. Of course, anti-corruption bodies and anti-corruption activists that are supporting them, and they lobbied also Western countries that it should be supported because they believe that nothing can stand on the way of finishing anti-corruption matter, anti-corruption case. Unfortunately, anti-corruption cases, it is small, important, but still small percentage of all criminal procedures of Ukraine. Collateral damage 4,000 others procedures is pretty significant. In our opinion, actually, main damage has already taken place after the cancellation of the first edit, but at least here we still have certain influence of investigative judges, not only prosecutors, on how long this um, these procedures might last. So actually, if some kind of project has to be approved, then we believe that the project of the Cabinet of Ministers is still still um, save this role of the judge in the 12th months is the least damaging of all the variants. But it seems to me that we had to previously think about some solution that might focus liquidation of such edits and never-ending continuation of deadlines to the most vulnerable lines, and not so that all legislative system of Ukraine is collateral damage, because certain prosecutors cannot do everything in a timely manner. Thanks a lot. Could you please explain once again? So even if the version of the Cabinet of Ministers, as I understand, is the best, but how should look the version that will let us have this structural beacon, so to cancel the ways added. But we are talking here about certain modifications, so we cancel it. But as far as I understand, the project of the Cabinet of Minister was perceived by the IMF as well enough. But activists believed that no, this investigative judge can do something, so it should be unlimited rights of prosecutors to continue this as long as they want, and that's why they persuaded some international countries, in particular country of certain stars, that they have to protect this variant, whereas IMF, as far as I understand, has never had such requirements. So if there should be some variant that might execute IMF requirement, this is the project of the Cabinet of Ministers. Thanks a lot. I already see that Andrei Yarashov, he's next actually in our agenda, also would like to mention something from the point of view of business. Andrei, please. Hello. Actually, Roman talked comprehensively about all the problematics from the side of business extreme. I support that wholeheartedly. But what I would like to highlight that even in the Cabinet of Ministers draft law, there is a reference to certain points of the letters and memorandum from the 17th of June and 4th of October 2024. And it has been mentioned clearly there that this norm about the absence should be spread only for corruption crimes. Corruption. And Roman proves once again that currently we have here the risks for business because activists turned all the situation upside down, and they have mentioned that it should be for all the cases. So that's why it was supported later by law enforcement bodies, and that's why we have such blocking from the side of business concerning the fact that it shouldn't be spread to all the matters. Business in general supports only two parts that support. The first one, to have such continuation through court, not only by prosecutors, and also the second thing, to limit the circle of criminal cases where they can be discussed with non-limited timelines, because as it has been rightly mentioned, actually 94% of cases do not even get to court. And today, already, due to the first iteration of cancellation of Lozovyi's edits, we have already received that factual. Well, that's not a correct word actually, but well, let's say factor implementation to procedures and non-actions are being taken. They're just open, and that's how business can try to influence. And I also would like to mention that it is a consecutive position of the business. You all know that you have been engaged, and business have been engaged. Lots of business associations have been engaged into implementation and of the standards of investigation that were adopted. If you remember, in 2024, and then they were made obligatory. So we see that unfortunately it's just the level of influence on the tool of influence on business. So we will be against this until we stand. So, but still, what those two components that I have mentioned, they are really of essence. We need to discuss that. Everything else is not the matter for the discussion. Is this position not only of the community of Ukrainian entrepreneurs, but also the Federation of Employers and I don't know, the Union of Entrepreneurs. So accordingly, this is our understanding of how it can be for business. So that's why we'll all stand on this position. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So we once again emphasize here that um, that court reform will not solve everything. We'll need reform of prosecutor's office. I think that any kind of reform, especially of court system, that's for many years. But the matter here is that if we want to perform this IMF beacon, we need to see what is written there, and it is written clearly: corruption cases. Everything else is not mentioned there. So that's why we are for that. And it also has not been mentioned. It's actually the previous event that took place. If I'm not mistaken, it was the beginning of 2024 concerning that. So even the prosecutor from the USA, as far as I remember, he has mentioned that even prosecutors themselves, they can prolong such timelines. But in Ukrainian realia, it is not a working situation. So that's why we would like to mention that a very judicial system should continue that, because it is responsibility of all these people who submit that and to adopt that. Thanks a lot. Before we move to anti-corruption, because we have this very strong resistance between business and anti-corruption, and we would like to omit this in our Ukrainian discussions, but still we'll see. Roman, have you informed your opinion to Ministry of Justice and deputies? Unfortunately, Minister of Justice could not be with us today because profile deputy is on the business trip. So do they hear you, or maybe you need some bigger support and discussion from the side of population as well, from the side? Well, I think that they hear us. I see that they understand it in the government and they know about that. But here we are talking about the fact that there is this external factor. And it seems to me that Ukraine has to differentiate and to see what is a real demand and requirement of the IMF and what is just additional home task by other structures or people. Thanks a lot. Now I would like to actually, we have this block of anti-corruption concerning that. First, I would like to give the floor to Yevhen and then to Pavlo, if you don't mind. Yevhen Tokar, the head of the Department of Analytical Provision of National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. Vyacheslav has shown on the slide that you're actually supporting this alternative draft law, the third one. Could you please talk a little bit more about your point of view, especially from the point from taking into account what Roman and Andriy have just mentioned, please? We can't hear you. We can see you, but we can't hear you. No. Even though we see that you unmuted your mic, we still cannot hear you.
Може, щось з мікрофоном саме. Мікрофоном.
Maybe something's wrong with the mic.
Пробуйте зараз. Ні, не чути все одно.
No, we still can't hear you.
Давайте тоді я зараз дам слово пану.
Well, let me give the floor to Pavlo now, and you'll try to figure out the situation with the sound. Pavlo, you see, we have just heard the point of view of business, and anti-corruption organizations have told someone something and working against the business. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's how it sounds. Well, Transparency International Ukraine, it is actually this very adequate organization and from anti-corruption ones, and they have very thorough approach, structured approach to analysis of all draft laws. I have seen your analysis, and then alternative ones appeared. Could you please talk a little bit more about your point of view, about your position, and whether you support that governmental draft law with better, or maybe we can find some common ground here that might not damage the business from anti-corruption point of view. It will be very useful for Ukraine. And why such edits should be cancelled? Where is the corruption component here? Thanks a lot for this invitation. Of course, that without development of business, there will be no function or there will be no normal functioning of the state, because the state takes money from taxpayers, and of course we have to have very thorough approach to creating beneficial atmosphere and environment for white entrepreneurship. And if to talk about Lozovyi's edits, then actually this mechanism that appeared in 2018 has this unpleasant pitfall in the investigation. Let me explain in a nutshell our position concerning that. The biggest discussion was going on concerning point 10, Article 284 of Criminal Procedural Code. This point defines that criminal procedure can be closed by the court if indictment came before notification of suspicion to person, except some other violence crime. So what's the problem here? So as we have seen on the practice, this ground for closing criminal procedures is used when there are already mistakes, when there are already suspects, when already the case is in the court. So indictment is there, and prosecutor supports this indictment. And for example, the prosecutor is or maybe miscalculated terms and was 4 days late. And after these 4 days, the court recalculated and mentioned that yes, the deadline for pretrial investigation is missed, so we close this. Of course, then now we have this matter of unfairness a little bit. Of course, we talk here about terms of pretrial investigation, and if it really lasts for months, for years, and this person is a suspect and doesn't have time or resources to protect himself or herself from this criminal procedure, that's already the matter of human rights violation. And this violation should have certain consequences for the part of plaintiff when they actually miss such terms. So we informed our partners about this position. We informed that timelines of pretrial investigations have to be balanced with the interest of defendant side. But in this case, we now have a procedure in Criminal Procedural Code of Ukraine that the court practically automatically closes the case if there is a miss of deadline. It doesn't matter whether it's 4 days or several months, and it says that that's it. The pretrial investigation period is missed. So of course the biggest problem is that it should be automatic closing, and that before 2018 pre-trial investigation period was prolonged by the prosecutor after 2018 in those criminal procedures at NU. Such period had to be continued by investigative judge. And because of such an addition in the law that has not clearly defined what to do with those criminal procedures that started before Lozovyi's edits and that got new cases, we had certain problem in such complex procedures. And then we could see those positions of Supreme Court. We saw news in one of the about one of the famous Ukrainian oligarchs. We also heard about closure of a very important anti-corruption cases. So because of this mix that happened. And that's why we are standing in this position that really this is automatic closing of criminal cases. It has to be cancelled. At the same time, we need to have adequate ways to respond to such prolongations and delays. As of now, such mechanisms are mentioned in Article 108, if I am not mistaken. You can complain to the prosecutor of the higher level. And this mechanism has certain problems, and it seems to me that we need to look towards its improvement.
Дуже дякую. Хочу уточнити, що на
Thank you. I would like to clarify what, in your opinion, is balanced pre-trial investigation period. What should it be? So I mean that consequences, if this is missed. Can you hear me? Yes, Johan, we can hear you now. Thank you. Let Pavlo finish, and then I will give you the floor, okay? Yes, so a closing of procedure should not be automatic. So roughly speaking, the court, when it sees that the case has missed the pre-trial investigation period, should have this opportunity to evaluate whether it really violated the right of this specific so some specific person or people connected with this person. And after that, we need to see what to do with the case. And another variant of the situation is that if evidence is gathered not properly, it can also be not applicable. And if court decides that the evidence is not applicable, the side of the defendant can say that it is not applicable. It has led to violation of these rights of our client. So, and the court can decide already what kind of sentence should be given. Your point of view is mentioned in one of the draft laws, or it's just one of the compromises that is being offered? Well, it has not been clearly defined in any of these draft laws, because you yourself have seen that they show different approaches. Somewhere the court should do that, investigative court, somewhere the prosecutor should prolong it, somewhere investigative court up to 12 months. But actually, we have mentioned that we need to take away this automatic closing, but we need to add as a variant of respond to violation of more trial investigation period. But in the Criminal Procedural Code of Ukraine, we have definition of that. And unfortunately, sometimes we cannot work in law without such notions. It's just the court has to work certain approaches to use it correctly. Thank you. We are going to listen to Yevhen now, and then Andriy, I will give you the opportunity to reflect and to ask questions. It's just that let's listen to the story from the anti-corruption point of view. So Yevhen, excuse me, I see that there is also the question in the chat. I don't know whether I should respond right now. Yes, please respond, and then I will give the floor to Yevhen. Let me write out the question from Olena. Why from the very beginning it was decided to not to pay attention to the mess of a pre-trial investigation period in corporate world. If you miss deadline, it is not usually it was usually forgiven. So to forgive the deadline. So could you please emphasize the context? Because I can answer about the second part, because criminal sphere is connected with the most serious limitations of human rights, and maybe here we have certain specifics. But the first part of your question, I don't understand it actually. Lena, could you please ask your question? Yes, let me just do it very fast. Lena Grazdan Kyiv Post. It's just that I understand the logic, but I do not really understand why from the very beginning it was like that. So that, for example, the prosecutor misses the period of submitting suspicion or materials by 4 days. I'm not a lawyer, so I might explain something a little bit simpler than lawyers, but I understand the logic. But at the same time, somehow it was decided that the mechanism that we can continue this. So if, for example, we are late, or I personally from lawyers have heard very often that prosecutors have this tendency to prepare not very high quality documents, and when they prepare it for a very long way, then once again prolong such deadlines, and it's everlasting. But apart from that, instead of somehow solving this issue, and maybe let's prepare all the materials on time, the decision was made to just to continue those investigation period, so that maybe some other mechanism can be used so that prosecutors can do everything on time. I think that you understand the question right now. Yeah, so actually, the first element of the disciplinary responsibility of the prosecutors that was also offered, and actually it can now also be used. Just wanted to clarify it a little bit. From the other hand, can we, for example, compare the consequences? But whether it really, if 4 days are missed and closing of criminal procedure, can it be compared is the fact that the case where potentially there could have been reimbursed huge volumes of losses, or assets returned and big amounts of money, can it be compared with the fact that with discipline prosecutors? In my opinion, such consequences are not equal. So yes, it's of course to discipline, but let's discipline in a balanced way. But then how will we know whether prosecutor prepared accusation in some big white collar crime because it was delayed on purpose, or because the prosecutor just didn't have enough time? How can we find this out? Well, in any case, if a person on purpose does not prepare accusation for a too long period of time, it will be a violation of human rights. And that's why court can state this and even close a criminal procedure. At the same time, prosecutor can also provide explanation of what's the reason for this delay. Maybe according to the calculation of that prosecutor, and we see it in majority of cases, prosecutors provide their matter of calculation when the defendant part opens certain materials and familiarize himself with certain materials. So a court can assess whether it was a mistake and whether it was purpose. Thanks a lot. Now I would like to give the floor to Yevhen, and then Andrei will have the opportunity to talk. Yevhen, we see that you have supported the third alternative draft law. We have heard from businesses that actually support governmental version more. Pavlo offers some compromise here. Could you please explain your point of view, the point of view of NABU? Why this third one, and maybe you prefer some kind of compromise variant that has not yet been in parliament? Yes, welcome all participants of this discussion. Thank you for this opportunity to join you today, because based on our experience in such discussions where we have representatives of various directions, various spheres, that's actually where very constructive ideas might appear and balanced solutions. Actually, the draft law, if you're talking about the main draft law, 12367, it appeared with lots of struggles. There were lots of debates, discussions on the governmental level, then already in the Committee of Law Enforcement Activity. That's why this edition, in the way it is right now on the website, I would say that it is already compromised. Of course, it will not satisfy it will satisfy nor business nor law enforcement bodies fully. I can talk about National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecution Office. From our point of view, why? Well, in this draft law, it has certain good matters, but still it does not fully cover needs of law enforcement system. First of all, I would like to mention that before implementation of Lozovyi edits in 2018, there was this order when pre-trial investigation period started from the moment of notification of suspicion, and very and prosecutor was responsible for everything there. Why prosecutor? Because prosecutor at procedural management in pre-trial investigation, he knows all the matter of criminal procedure. And if we are talking about this matter of decision making, whether pre-trial investigation period should be prolonged or not, to make a justified decision, you need to understand the whole spectrum of evidence, the whole pool of evidence that are now currently gathered in criminal procedure, and whether this evidence is enough to formulate indictment and to pass this case to the court. So accordingly, the only procedural person who has necessary knowledge is a prosecutor, because prosecutor has full access to criminal procedure, and he, as a supreme, let's say, person in this hierarchy, can make decision about the end of a pre-trial investigation. At the same time, edits of Lozovyi mentioned that not prosecutor but investigative judge should prolong such a period, and it created pretty interesting but controversial position when investigative judge have to make this decision whether there is enough evidence or maybe additional action should be done to gather additional evidence. In our opinion, it is not proper function for investigative judge, because investigative judge should be unbiased, and on the basis of pre-trial investigation, it does not deal with all the material. He just listens to the sides, maybe investigate certain evidence that he or she needs to assess on decision making, or grants the permission or does not grant the permission for certain acts. If you're talking about the institute of the judge, but according to investigative judge, if we talk as it should be from the point of view of the very idea of the very norm, the investigative judge should investigate the very case in full and to make the decision whether it should already be given to the court, or maybe several additional months should be granted so that some additional evidence can be collected. So in our point of view, this norm is not organic. It's actually kind of should have certain guarantees not to have a very long investigation. But at the same time, investigative judge here in this position that if he does not have access to all the materials and he just listens to the prosecutor, and if the prosecutor is very eloquent and provides a great explanation, then investigative judge should make the decision that yes, this investigation period should still be prolonged for a certain period of time. At the same time, when it says that no, then that's how they can say that the decision is made that Yeah, that's enough evidence. You don't need to collect any other evidence. The case is ready to go to the court. And it seems to us that it is not role of investigative judge in this particular case. It is not organic. It is not logic. So in our opinion, what's the disadvantage of this draft law from the government is that it is still preserving this institute of continuation with the pretrial investigation period after notification of suspicion, and it should be done by investigative judge. I would like to mention immediately that previous speakers have already mentioned that fact that we need to maintain this balance so that prosecutors cannot investigate criminal procedure for unlimited amount of time, and we need to have some restraining factors that might limit them somehow. But I would like to pay attention here that we are talking about prolongation of a pretrial investigation period after notification of suspicion. So the maximum number is 12 months, up to 12 months. So the standard timeline is 2 months after notification of suspicion, and now it can be also prolonged to up to 3 months, and it has to be continued then plus 9 months. Then he needs to go to investigative judge. I would not say that it is that a timeline where we see certain particular risks that prosecutors somehow will be interested to prolong this case and not to direct it to the court. Usually, if the prosecutor is acting rightly, then he's just interested in collecting additional evidence so that the case is as quality as possible and so that the side of the prosecution has all the arguments to prove their position in the court. If prosecutor does not act officially, then additional several months will not help here. And if a prosecutor is malevolent, then these several months will not influence the situation significantly. So that offers that we have an alternative draft law 12367, that's what we mostly support. Point 3, then they said the prosecutor can prolong this timeline to 6 or even 12 months. So accordingly, to say that we have certain bias here, well, we are not saying that the prosecutor will have this tool of forever continuing this case because of some wrong motives and influence or pressure the business or some physical entity. Here we are talking about continuation for several additional months to collect additional evidence and to give the case to the court, because there is no other opportunity here. The prosecutor can either close the case or give it to the court, but this additional several months, we do not see here some unjustified matters. It's not like it was in the previous edition, and we had the first part of edits of Lozovyi, and it could go for years, really. So that's why prosecutor in any case is interested if is acting malevolently and wants to give all the evidence to the court. But if it's not integral, if it's the prosecutor without integrity and wants to pressure the business, then it will not go to the suspicion, it will stay on the factual level, or the prosecutor will probably perform something else. But in any case, it will not be directed towards continuation of this timeline to just get some additional month, because when a person is already with a suspicion, when it's already on the finish line, the field for a certain kind of bias is very narrow here. So that's why, in our opinion, the third version is the most consecutive because it's complex and it takes away all imperfections that were introduced because of Lozovyi's edits. And I also would like to mention it has also been mentioned by others, but in any case, this provision that there can be no the delay in several days cannot be the reason for closing. Then, from the point of view of legislation, point of view and international practice, it correlates with common sense because actually existing norm point 10 helps to close the criminal procedure only if trial investigation period is missed. And it does not matter what is the severity of criminal procedure. And that's actually a universal way for a person to avoid criminal investigation. If actually it's the best way for someone to omit this criminal responsibility because it cannot be appealed, it cannot go to court, it cannot go to any other prosecutor, so no one can reconvene this period if it has ended already. So actually it's pretty dangerous tool, and taking into account imperfection edits of Lozovyi that brought to different readings and different interpretation of criminal procedures, so that is the ones that existed before Lozovyi's edits when they were later united with other criminal procedures because of the imperfection of legislation. It was different practice who should continue this and such procedures. It led to the fact that huge pool of criminal investigation, not only of National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, where prosecutor had to make a decision judged on the fact that it's old numbers, so old rules should be here. But because of this practice in courts, we have this position that such a criminal procedure have to be closed because it was not done properly. So it might lead to the fact that if people have enough evidence gathered against them, can avoid criminal responsibility. And consulting with other colleagues from other countries, we haven't found any other precedent when violation of such period has such inevitable, such fundamental consequences. So that's why we are deeply sure that it is absolutely right way we are having right now, and this norm has to be cancelled. But at the same time, we still have guarantees for the part of side protection because the prosecution side also does not need any, this prosecution side does not have the right to conduct any kind of investigative actions or collect evidence. It will not be able to continue any other measure of a criminal procedure, for example, some measures concerning the person. So that's why it's a very powerful tool. And this closing of a pretrial investigation period will make any kind of misuse impossible, because if already something was selected, it will not be into force because investigative judge will not be able to continue it even if she wants, because there is no period of pretrial investigation, so no kind of action will be possible to conduct here. And the last thing that I would like to mention, that criminal procedural code, even now without any particular changes, presupposes that it is absolutely possible to appeal the actions or lack of actions of the prosecutor, and it is already mentioned there. So according to the law, prosecutors should perform these or that actions. Thanks a lot. It's just the only thing that I would like to mention here is that, yes, in our criminal procedural code, we have lots of good things, but in practice, we face with the fact that what Roman is talking, that 94% do not even come to suspicion. And once again, we are coming to the fact that we need to have integral prosecutors that we do not always have, unfortunately. And Irina also mentioned in the comment that the prosecutor can still prolong it even after when it's in the court because they are not limited. But now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Andrei. Andrei, please, you have had your hand raised for a very long time already. Yes, I haven't even put it down because I have the question. Why I want to explain why business is for this wide discussion. I have one more confirmation for that because Pavlo has mentioned that unlimited timeline, unlimited period, the person that is that has not yet even received suspicion, but nothing is going on. That person has the right to protect himself, and they also in this position it's protection of human rights. But actually, we do not have human rights protection today because we do not have timelines. And yes, there are certain signs, but still, once again, if it's just factors of violation through which they try to influence the business. So that's why these norms definitely have to be mentioned to have understanding that the person will be protected and not just theoretically, but practically as well. So concerning what Yevhen has mentioned, actually, it's pretty interesting here, and I think that all law enforcement bodies know about that. That, for example, the prosecutor can prolong the terms in any period in pre-trial process, but the decision of investigative judge should appear in single register of court decisions, and it cannot be done later than it is mentioned there. And this is this mechanism of influence and guaranteeing non-violation. So once again, you have mentioned several months. Several months, you mentioned that it's 12 months, yes? 2, 1 plus 9, yes? So a person actually will have still 12 more months. Of course, we understand that it might not be very significant timeline, but for a particular person, it can be extremely significant if it's some fabricated case. So that's why we are moving here to the fact that draft laws exist. Each of them has some positive sides, but in general, they do not even they do not even align with our visions. So we, as we've still offered to have wider discussion, and business association will have their representatives, and we will reach some compromise solution because as of now, um, it's just playing it's just back and forth. So you're talking about lack of action from the side of prosecutor, but who should confirm that? Investigative judge. So that's why it looks like there is no balance. And for the balance, we actually need this investigative judge. You're right that theoretically, he theoretically assesses materials and can say that, yes, I will prolong this or not prolong because something is done or something has not been done in a timely manner for some reason. Or can say that no, because it will always be subjective. But in any case, there should be the third part, not the side of the prosecution, not the side that is under suspicion, but court system. That's why court system should make this decision, and we will protect this position as much as it's possible. Thank you. Thank you, Roman. Maybe you'd like to add something, or let's give the floor to Pavlo and Yevhen to reflect. No, I think that I'm done here already. Thank you. It's just that in the chat, we have Nadia Kalashnik. She's also writing about the fact that how to deal when the timelines that cannot be never ending, because what, for example, if the person is not on this position? It's like what Andriy has mentioned partially, but Pavlo Yevgen, could you please reflect on Andriy's thoughts? Yes, and actually, we can immediately answer this question in the chat. I have covered it partially already, that if there is no period of pretrial investigation, it has come to the end already, then any type of protection will also come to its end, because usually all measures of criminal procedures and all the others, they are all connected to this pretrial investigation. So if we are talking about certain risks, that if it is the end of pretrial investigation, there are no guarantees for the person under suspicion that maybe this time can last too long, then I would like to emphasize once again that all these measures come to the end automatically when it is the end of pretrial investigation, and they cannot be prolonged if there is no period of pretrial investigation. So in our opinion, it's pretty balanced situation, that on the one hand, we remove this opportunity to close automatic criminal procedure, but at the same time, the defendant sides have this guarantee that if it is the end of the period, then the prosecutor and investigator already do not have any measures to influence them, because they cannot use any other criminal procedure measure or certain procedural actions directed towards collecting evidence. The only way is to either close the procedure or to give it to the court. There are no other variants, just because the law does not permit anything else. And let's also not forget about disciplinary responsibility, because for any prosecutor, if he does not control a pretrial investigation period, it has come to an end, and the measure is not taken, the one that is presupposed as a mandatory one. So it's either closure or that it should go to the court. Then it's a direct consequence is disciplinary responsibility. That's why we cannot say that there was this previous matter why we forgive such lack of action from the prosecutor. No, prosecutor will be punished. It's just that it will not have consequence for the whole society and the state. The first task of the criminal procedure is actually to reimburse the losses, so protect society from criminal actions. So there will be no consequences for society, but there will be consequences for specific person. And what has been mentioned concerning investigative judge and mandatory role of the judge, as I have also already mentioned, I understand this idea that there should be some kind of balance, but on the other hand, investigative judge in this process is not acting organic. And even when we were taking part in the discussion on the level of law enforcement committee, then even judges admitted that this judge should control the illegality of certain actions to give the permission for search and some other measures. And here we have different nature of legislative relations. So in our opinion, we do not have any kind of deeper problem here. Prosecutors in majority of countries are actual prosecutors are responsible for all these pretrial investigation periods. Thank you, Pavlo. Could you please reflect and maybe you have certain information concerning how many prosecutors we have, how many of them have been removed from office when a business when business complained. Well, I have not viewed this information concerning how many prosecutors actually were brought to disciplinary responsibility, but this information is open. You can take a look at that. I just would like to add one more thing, that the reason for closing is only about those cases when there are already suspicions and when there are also already indictments in the court. So it is just fewer, just lower part of these cases that are in fact already were directed to the court. So it's not that huge, massive when there are just arrest of assets and there is no suspicion. That's it.
Дуже дякую. Ми будемо вже завершувати.
Thanks a lot. We would like to wrap up. Thank you everyone for the discussion. Once again, we are talking about the fact that we need to meet more often and to talk more often. I think our next step will be such discussion in this format of discussing alternative draft law, because we understand that this structural beacon was postponed and we have several months for developing another draft law that I hope will be in compliance with that point of view that we have heard today, but we will find some kind of compromise variant that mentioned that business might be damaged, but at the same time we stick to the rights that are correct for international arena. Once again, I would like to mention here that the dialogue is important and we need to hear other sides as well, because sometimes we forget that apart from the point of view of, for example, one, there are other points of views, and we will be talking about that. With the colleagues, we are conducting monitorings and meetings. We conduct them every month. I don't know the topic of our next month, but we will try to choose the topic that is useful for Ukraine and for our development. But today, my summary is that we have to stop talking only about court reform, and we need to talk about the fact that the court reform should be performed and there should be prosecution office reform. Changes to criminal procedural code and so on and so forth, everything will work according to international standards. Because if we talk only about judges but forget about prosecutors, business will not be protected. Thank you for attention, everyone. There is a presentation on the website. Let's keep in touch. Let's implement new good reforms, and we are monitoring and we are helping the government to implement the right solutions. I am really grateful everyone for their participation. I wish nice and calm evening to everyone. Thanks a lot and goodbye. Thank you and goodbye.